Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the new god devil and got mass harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Ghost of the Kitsune for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Casually standing atop what appeared to be an abandoned building was a lone man. He was of Caucasian descent with a nice tan. He stood at about 180 centimeters and had blonde hair with blue eyes and what looked like whiskers on his cheeks. He was wearing orange pants with a black long-sleeved jacket with a red armband on his left arm. He was also wearing black toe-less sandals and had bandages wrapped around his right arm and a headband that had a metal plate depicting a leaf. This man was Naruto Uzumaki, the hero of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. As he looked over the town, Kuo as he had learned was its name, he couldn't help but release a tired sigh. I can't believe those bastards caused me to end up in another freaking dimension. He thought while once more thinking of the situation he had landed himself into. He had been trapped in this new world for 3 months so far. Well, what did you expect from a bunch of desperate idiots playing around with things they don't understand? This was the question from his literal closest friend, Kurama. Naruto could only nod in agreement. As he looked at the school that was spread out before him, Kuo Academy, he couldn't help but remember what had happened to land him here. Them and Sai were tasked with tracking down and eliminating a fascist group of shinobi called the Uchiha Armament Alliance. They were a group that formed after the war and agreed with Madara's views for the world. Due to this they were labeled as a threat to all the nations and the peace that had been achieved. That was when the two Konoha shinobi had been tasked with their mission, which they had thought they completed. It had taken them around 7 months of searching and taking down numerous different groups before they returned home. It was at that time that Naruto had finally gotten his prosthetic arm to replace the one he lost. It came as a shock to him 3 days later when he had been called into the Hokage's office. It was then that he had been informed that scouts from the Hidden Stone had caught sight of another squad of the Uchiha Alliance. They had theorized that they were in hiding for some reason, which was why they didn't know about them. This was how Naruto was given another mission. He was to test the strength of his new arm and make sure that it worked fine. For this reason it was Sakura who had accompanied him to make sure his arm worked fine while he dealt with the problem. It took the two around a week to find them, and from there the cleanup was easy. They had quickly started taking the rogue shinobi down when they found them, Sakura joining out of boredom. It was a group of about 30 members, but they weren't a threat to the two of them. After they had taken down a large portion of the rogues with simple taijutsu, 2 of the remaining 5 took off. Dottie was told by Sakura to go after them while she took care of the rest, since he was better at sensing and could find them easier. Naruto nodded and left. He knew Sakura was good enough to handle the rest of those guys. He quickly caught up to the 2 runners and cut them off in a clearing. As he looked at the 2 he could see their nervousness. That was when the 2 slammed their hands on the ground. A gust of wind blew the dust covering the ground away to reveal a seal that he could tell was already there before they had arrived. This was what this group's mission was. One of their members had managed to find one of the kunai for the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and they were trying to modify it. They wanted to be able to teleport anywhere without the marker, which would allow them to attack any village. What they had failed to do was actually get a seal master to look at the seal, since they didn't have one, and because of that they had caused a negative change in the design. While the original seal did require chakra to activate, it wasn't really much. The changes they had made, however, caused the technique to now siphon off all of the chakra of whoever was using it. Since they had never gotten the chance to test it, the 2 rogue shinobi didn't know about the problem. As soon as they activated the seal they began screaming. Naruto watched as the 2 men began wrinkling before literally turning into dust. Naruto, seeing that and not wanting to suffer the same fate, activated his Kurama chakra mode to try and escape. This proved to be a bad idea as he realized that he couldn't move even with all the power he had, which just powered the seal more. Naruto then turned off his cloak, but the damage was already done. He heard someone screaming his name and looked to see Sakura running towards him. His last sight was the fear on her face as she tried to get to him before all he saw was white. In an instant he was gone, leaving nothing but a crater where he was. His vision returned to reveal he was now in a completely different area. He could feel how weak he was, but thankfully the seal hadn't pulled out too much chakra from Kurama, who quickly refilled his reserves. As he surveyed the area he had landed in he noticed he was still in a forest, though the trees were different and smaller. At first he had thought that he was just transported to another part of the elemental nations, but that was soon disproved as he entered sage mode. He was trying to find the nearest settlement of people so he could get some idea on where he was. Imagine his surprise when he had sensed a lot of people nearby, but none of them had any chakra or anything in their body. This was his first clue he was in another world. Well, that wasn't completely true. He had found one weird chakra signature surrounded by a bunch of other energy signatures that had a lot of negativity surrounding them. The weird chakra signature also had that negative energy. This had piqued his interest, and he had quickly went to try and find these weird energy signatures. When he had finally made it to the town, he had gotten his second hint that he was in another world. The things that he had seen, such as cars and cell phones and other technological advances that he now knew the names of and knew they didn't have in his world, was something that surprised him also. Seeing all these new things in what appeared to be a civilian town was quite interesting. He had actually taken his time to walk through the town while heading towards where he felt the only energy signatures coming from. Once he finally reached his destination, he was quick to identify all of the people with the weird energies. He quickly began observing them to try and find out why they had energy while nobody else had any. He was soon given another surprise when he had found out that this group had some type of teleportation technique. He had been watching them through a window leading into the building they were in from an adjacent roof. This was how Naruto came up with the idea to use whatever that was to try and find a way back home after he had tried and failed with the toads, of course. He at least had a knowledge on seals, and what they were using also looked like a type of sealing array, so he might be able to use their technique to engineer a way home. He doubted that Sasuke would be able to help since he knew he needed to sync his space-time technique to the one that brought him here so he could enter this world. He doubted that this was one of Kagaya's dimensions. But that thought Naruto had waited till all of the occupants, all 4 of them, had left the building. Once they had left, he had entered, read as broken in, and began looking for any information he could find. He had luckily found some papers with the same markings as the ones they used to teleport in one of the drawers for the desk. He had a feeling that these were used in the same sense as the kunes for his father's technique. There was no reason to have so many papers with a mark they used to teleport unless they were also used for that. With this thought, Naruto tore a few of the papers before he took them. If it worked the same way as seals, then it would be useless with the markings damaged. He didn't want any surprise visitors after all. Seeing that he had now found some information on a way home, Naruto left. That was 3 months ago, as was already stated. He had tried to discover how those markings worked but couldn't. While they had some resemblance to sealing, the markings and formations were too different for him to just figure it out on his own. He had been studying both the people with energy and the teleportation matrix that they used by continuously sneaking into both groups' hangouts and observing them from a distance. He had gotten more information on the people than he had on his ticket home, though. That's why he was once more in Kuo Academy. He had decided that, since he couldn't figure it out on his own, he would ask one of the devils, which he now knew they were called, to help him. He had already wasted too much time. So he would finally reveal himself to the devils. Well, this wasn't something that he wanted to do, he didn't really have much choice. He also didn't want to try and start any fights, since he had read some of the stories on these creatures and knew there could be many more of them than what he knew. He was alone in this world and he didn't know all of the enemy's abilities, so he would try to keep it peaceful. That didn't mean he would let them walk over him, though. He still had his pride as a shinobi. He at least knew all of the abilities of his current targets and had deemed them as not a threat, though he would keep his guard up so they wouldn't catch him with any surprises. He really couldn't afford that right now. But the grunt Naruto jumped off of and then entered the building. This was where the Occult Research Club, the cover that Rias Grimoire used, gathered to discuss several matters. He had learned the names and abilities of all of the members of both Rias and Sona's peerages and had found out that several of them also had other types of energies in them, like Kaneko with her weird chakra and Akeno with some type of energy that gave off sort of a mixed signature. Rias and Sona's energies also felt a bit different than everyone else, more natural to them, though he didn't know why. He would have went to Sona, but she was more the brainy type. That might make things more difficult for him. So instead he had decided to confront Rias, the lesser of two evils and all that, to try and come to an agreement for the information he needed. He just hoped that things went well. Walking into the building, he was quick to enter the meeting room. He proceeded to sit behind the desk in the room and made himself comfortable. It was a few seconds later that a loud ringing sound pierced the air. That was the final bell signifying the end of the school day. He knew that Rias and her motley crew would be making their way to his location soon. He looked up and waved at the camera he knew was hidden in the room that sensed motion and alerted the owner. He would normally go through without setting it off and avoiding being seen, but he wanted to gain their attention now. He was still impressed by the technology of this world and had began archiving some of them to carry back the information when he went home. Now we just have to wait. He thought to himself. It wouldn't be long now before he met the people that could very well get him back home. Whether they would be willing to help him or not was another matter altogether. Rias Grimoire had been having a horrible few months. She had found out, only thanks to Kaneko's sense of smell, that someone had been in the clubroom. That was almost 3 months ago, and they still had no clue on who the culprit was. They had tried to find the person, but the scent literally went all over Kuo, which meant it was a dead end. She would have tried to let it go, since whoever it was didn't seem to do anything to their stuff, but then the person came back. And since then whoever it was had been in the clubroom several times. They had also appeared to have entered the student council room, which meant that this person was targeting both present devil groups. This made everyone really nervous. Who was it that was sneaking around? They had tried to set traps, stake out both places and a lot of other things, but they could never seem to catch whoever it was. Even when they applied protection sigils to stop the intruder from entering the buildings, they still seemed to get in somehow. Even leaving their familiars around didn't help, and this made everyone have to be on guard constantly. She could respect this person though. This was a good method of weakening them if they were targets. By making them have to be on constant alert meant that they were always on guard, never relaxing. The fact that they all had to remain on constant alert for almost 3 months, with no idea when or even if their adversary would attack, had made them all tired and had taken a bit of a mental toll on them, some more than others. Rias actually found herself wishing that whoever it was would just do what they were planning and get it over with. At least then she would be able to rest one way or another. She was really tired of this entire fiasco. She was relieved when she heard the final bell ring. She had to keep up appearances in school, so she had to act like nothing was wrong around the humans, along with all of the other devils. With a grateful sigh she stood and collected her things. As she exited the classroom she heard the voice of one of her oldest friends call her. She stopped to allow Sona to reach her as they began walking, with both of their queens trailing a bit behind them. "Have you gotten anything on our mysterious intruder?" asked Sona, hoping that they had managed to get some type of information. She, like Rias, also respected this use of mental warfare, though she also wished it would hurry up and end. She hadn't gotten a good night's sleep at all since they realized that someone was infiltrating their inner sanctums. When she found whoever it was she would make sure they suffered a long and excruciating torture for all of the stress they put her through. Once she heard her friend give a tired sigh she knew her answer. Seeing that they still had no luck on that front she decided to change the subject. "So how's your observation of the Haidu boy going?" Rias actually brightened up a bit at this. "Well, I've just began watching him so I don't have much information to go on yet. I do still believe he might have a useful sacred gear, though." Sona nodded at this. She really hoped that he was as strong as Rias hoped so he would be able to help her with her problems. Sona had also began taking interest in someone to join her peerage, Saji Genshiro. She had been observing him for a while and was thinking about recruiting him, but that had to wait until they had dealt with their current problem. A new devil would be too big a target and liability if they were attacked after all. Rias just sighed in frustration. Before anything more could be said Rias reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She wasn't allowed to check it during classes, so she would check it now to see if she had missed anything important. The minute her phone screen lit up Rias stopped. She was getting a notification that the camera she had installed had picked up movement. She knew that none of her peerage had reached the building yet, the bell had just rung after all. She immediately opened her phone which instantly opened the camera's app and her eyes widened. She literally couldn't believe the timing in what she was seeing right now. Could this possibly be the person that they were just discussing? Seeing the shocked look on her friend's face Sona walked up next to her and took a glance at her phone. Her expression soon mirrored Ria's own. "Is this what I think it is?" she asked. She didn't want to sound as hopeful as she did, but she couldn't believe their luck. That thought sobered her up a bit. Why now? For months not even these very same cameras had been able to get anything on this intruder, so what had changed? This wasn't just dumb luck at work. If this man on the screen in Ria's office was the one who had been tormenting them for months, then why was he being so careless now? No. He wanted them to know he was there, he wasn't trying to hide from them. As if to prove this point the blonde man looked at the camera and waved, almost as if he knew they were watching him. This caused a shiver to run down Sona's spine, as, for some reason, she actually believed he did know. This caused her to narrow her eyes. Either this was some type of trap or this person wanted something. Those were the two most logical choices she could come up with as he had no other reason to reveal himself. It wasn't like they knew anything about him before now. This caused her to look at her friend who was also observing the man on the screen. "This doesn't feel right to me." Rias had to agree with her friend. She was having similar thoughts as well. "What should we do about this?" Rias really did want her friend's input. Sona was the best tactical mind in their age group, so she would listen to whatever she suggested and give her input if she thought it was necessary. Sona once more looked at the phone before speaking. "Well, it's obvious that he wants us to know he's there. It's like he wants us to think that the situation is in our control by giving us time to make plans to confront him. You're right. I think that he wants to meet us, but I'm not sure why. He is waiting for us in the clubroom so there must be a reason. Are we going to see what he wants?" Sona then looked towards Tsubaki, her queen. "Contact the rest of the peerage and tell them to meet us in front of the Occult Research Club building. Contact the rest of Ria's peerage also. Tsubaki was quick to obey as she pulled out her own phone and sent messages to everyone. Rias looked to her friend as she turned around and started heading towards the exit of the school. It wasn't long before the other members of both peerages began joining them in their walk towards the old abandoned school building. After a few minutes of walking, the 11 devils stood before the old building. It was at this time Sona began to speak again. We have finally gotten our first clue as to who has been sneaking around us these past few months. This got wide eyes from all the present devils excluding Rias and Sona. Akeno and Tsubaki was just hearing about it as well, since they didn't dare to eavesdrop on the conversation of the two kings. So are we going to finally get the bastard? Asked Haruko, Sona's pawn. She was one of her two newest members, along with Tomo, who was Sona's knight. The two had been reincarnated about a month and a half ago for different reasons. Tomo had a curse that Sona had broken by reincarnating her, while Haruko had found out about the supernatural world and requested Sona to turn her into a devil. The reason she had taken those two into her peerage at the time was because the threat wasn't as large then. Now, she couldn't take the risk. At least Tomo had training from her family to deal with supernatural beings, so she wasn't dead weight, and Haruko had been doing her best to prove herself. In another timeline she would have probably gotten Saji first if it weren't for their current problem. But the question asked everyone eagerly waited for a reply from the bespectacled girl. She knew that they all wanted to get their hands on this guy, but she couldn't allow an attack to happen just yet. It would be unwise not to find out what this person wanted. For now we are going to have a conversation with him, as that seems to be what he wants. From there we will decide how to act accordingly. This caused most of the girls to groan in annoyance. This guy, as they had just found out, had ruined months of sleep and relaxation for them. They had even gotten bags under their eyes and knew that they weren't looking their best, though luckily makeup hid all of this from everyone else. Giba, being the only guy in the group, actually felt a bit sorry for whoever their mystery intruder was. If any of these girls were given the okay to assault him, well he knew they wouldn't be too nice about it. This guy had pissed off a group of mostly female devils and they wanted revenge. So I'm assuming that we at least know where this mystery man is then. This statement was made by Momo, who was Sona's bishop. It was at this time that Rias showed everyone the live video on her phone. After seeing it, all of the present devils' attention shot towards the orc building. They had wondered why they were all told to gather there, but were now fully understanding of the situation. They couldn't even sense anyone in the building. So, what's the plan? Asked Rias, who, along with her peerage, had been quiet until this point. Well, since he's in your club room I assume that you're the one he wants to talk to, or at least someone from your peerage, since I'm sure he knows that there are two different groups of devils. Everyone nodded at that assumption. He had broken into the student council room and the orc building numerous times, after all, so he probably knew that they were separate groups, though how much he knew exactly was still unknown. So how do you want to play this? Asked Rias again. Me and my peerage will stay out here and create a barrier along with being the cavalry, while you and your peerage will try to find out what he wants. If anything happens it would do well if both of us weren't captured in a trap. Good idea. The barrier, especially since it'll be able to keep the town safe if this boils down to a fight, along with stopping any escapes he might try. Said Rias. While some people might see this as Sona using Rias as a bait, Rias saw the logic in what her friend was saying. They were the two strongest, so for both of them to walk into what could very well be a trap would be stupid. It was an even better plan since Sona had more peerage members than Rias, which meant she would have a better chance at a rescue mission if it came to that, which both groups hoped it didn't. Rias nodded in consent before Sona brought her phone out. Link my phone to the cameras so that I'll be able to keep a closer eye on what's going on in there. That way I'll be able to react better to any situation that might arise. Rias quickly synced Sona's phone to the cameras. After doing so, along with raising the barrier, all the members of the orc headed towards the building. As they reached it and Rias began to reach for the door to open it, she was stopped by Kiba. Please, President, allow me to go first in case of any traps. Rias quickly nodded her approval as she stepped aside. She really didn't like walking into the unknown like this and she hoped everything ended fine. She was confident in her powers, along with everyone else's, but she still didn't want to risk any of her precious servants getting hurt, nor Sona and hers. Kiba then slowly opened the door, prepared to move at the first sign of trouble. After seeing that there wasn't any traps, the four quickly entered the building with Kiba being in front and Kaneko right after, followed by Rias and then Akeno bringing up the rear. Before she entered, Rias looked back at Sona to see her give a nod, showing that she was there in case she needed it. This made her a bit less nervous about the whole thing, since they had other people also supporting them. After the four devils entered the building, they slowly and silently made their way to Rias' office, where their target was located. Rias used her video feed to make sure that he wasn't up to anything, since they still couldn't sense anything from him. It wasn't long before they stood before the door leading into the office. They all looked towards Rias for further instructions, but another voice spoke up before she could. "You can all come in, I'm not going to hurt any of you," spoke the man. Rias and her peerage instantly tensed. It seemed that he could sense them all just fine and had knew they were there. This caused Rias to release a sigh as they all entered the room in the same order they had entered the building. It was then that they all finally got a good look at the person who they assume has been harassing them these past few months. Rias would admit that he was a bit attractive, but her main interest was what he wanted and possibly what he could do for her. "Welcome Rias Gremory. It's a pleasure to finally meet you face to face," started the blonde, which got narrowed eyes from everyone. "It's also a pleasure for the rest of you to join us as well," he finished. Rias was once more feeling uncomfortable. While she and Sona had both speculated that this man would know about them, she really wanted to know how much he actually knew. "You know my name. What else do you know?" Rias made sure to keep her voice calm. It wouldn't do to show any weakness right now. She had to play the situation cool, had to act like she was in control. All of her control went out the window when the man laughed. "I know quite a bit about you, along with all of the other devils in this town." Rias tensed at this, and she could feel her peerage get ready to move if they had to. The blonde, seeing this and not wanting things to get violent, began to speak again. Hey. Would all of you calm down? I'm not here for a fight or anything if that's what you're all worried about." While his proclamation did sound sincere, none of the devils were willing to let their guard down. "It seems you know a bit about us, but we know nothing of you, stranger." Naruto could hear the underlying question in Ria's statement, which caused him to smile while scratching the back of his head. "Oh yeah. Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself." He spoke while standing from behind the desk, which caused even more tension from everyone. "The name's Naruto Uzumaki, and I would like it if we could have a peaceful conversation." This caused Rias to raise an eyebrow. "And what is it that you wish to have a conversation about?" she asked as the boy, Naruto, once more took the seat behind her desk. An act that had Rias seriously annoyed since that was her seat. The smile on Naruto's face seemed to grow at her question as he spoke. "Well, for the past few months I've been trying to accomplish a little goal of mine, but I've been having a bit of trouble with it." "And what exactly is this goal of yours, if you don't mind me asking?" Naruto just waved her off. "What I'm working on is of no concern to any of you. All that you need to know is that I am not your enemy, just a guy looking for information." Seeing that the devils were still standing around the room looking tense, Naruto tried something else. He looked towards Ria's second in command. "Akeno. Would you mind making some tea and snacks for everyone? Your cooking always seems to be able to calm you guys down." This was not the smart thing to say. "So you really have been watching us? Why?" Ria's tone was as cold as ice by this point. Naruto just released another sigh. "It's as I said earlier. I have a goal that I wish to complete and you guys have a way for me to do it. You still haven't said what it is exactly that you want from us." Rias looked at the blonde expectantly for an answer. "If you'd all just have a seat, then I'd be happy to explain. Having you all looking at me like you're ready to attack is making me quite nervous." All of the devils looked towards Rias for further instructions. She looked towards their blonde intruder for any sign of deceit and saw none. Since he looked like he was trying to keep things peaceful, she would comply. With that, she nodded to her peerage, who all took seats as well, though you can tell that they were prepared to react towards any threat. Seeing all the devils finally relaxing a bit, Naruto decided to continue. "Look, I really have no real interest in any of you, hell, it was by complete chance that I even found out about you guys." "So what is it that did catch your interest then?" asked Rias. Naruto just pointed at the space on the floor that held the transportation circle. "It was that." He spoke as everyone looked at it. This caused all of them to be confused. "What's so special about that?" asked Akeno. She normally wouldn't speak unless told to in these situations, but she found herself curious about this whole thing. She knew what it was for and why humans would want it, but the man before her seemed to have different motives for it. She could sense an almost desperate tone in his voice, which made her wonder why it was so important for him to make him stalk two devil groups for months just for it. Naruto just looked at her before returning his attention to Rias. "Like I said, it's of no concern to any of you. I've been studying that circle, but can't figure out how it works, so I'd like it if one of you would teach me about it." The orc members all just looked at one another before Rias let loose a small giggle. "You mean to tell me that you've been harassing the peerage of two high-class devils and sneaking into their clubs just to get information on one of the most basic devil abilities?" This statement caused Naruto to frown. "If you haven't noticed, I'm not a devil, so therefore what you consider basic would be a lot more to me. They might see it as just some mode of quick transportation, but Naruto saw it as his way home, with some tweaking of course." Rias nodded her head in agreement, a coy smile now present on her face. She could also sense the desperation coming from Naruto, and she would use that to her full advantage. Seeing that the situation was now somewhat back in her hands caused Rias to finally relax a bit. You know what, Akeno, I think we should have some tea, along with any snacks you can whip up with such short notice. Akeno and the others just looked at her in shock. Are you sure that that's a wise idea, President? Asked Akeno. She was the second strongest after Rias, so to send her away when they still weren't sure if there'd be an attack didn't seem like a smart idea. I'm sure, Akeno. Our friend here doesn't seem to be a threat, and I doubt he'd be willing to do anything that may cause him to not get the information he seeks. Naruto's face went blank at this. He could tell what she was trying to say. He needed what she had, so he would do whatever she wants to get it. She definitely couldn't be more wrong, but he would hold his tongue for now. Best to see if he could use this to his advantage first. So with that thought, Naruto sat back in his seat and smiled. It's as she said. I have no interest in fighting, and I really do need this information, so you have nothing to worry about from me. Rias just kept the smug smile on her face. See. We have nothing to worry about, so can you please bring us some refreshments? This time Akeno stood and gave a slight bow before leaving the room to do as her master asked. Rias then turned her attention back to Naruto. So what exactly is it that you want to know? She asked as she looked at him. I'd like to know everything that you guys can teach me about it. Rias nodded her head. Well, that won't be a problem for me to teach you what you need to know, but what can you offer in return? This was the part Naruto was dreading. He knew that the devils made deals with several people around town, but he didn't know what they received as payment. I really don't have much. What exactly is it that you might want? He asked irritated. Rias released a hum as if thinking before she smirked. Well, we know that you're good at sneaking around, but how good are you at fighting? Now it was Naruto's turn to tense. Was she going to attack him? He really hoped not, since he was truly trying to keep this whole encounter peaceful. Rias, seeing his expression and having a feeling of what he was thinking, decided to clarify her question. I'm not going to attack you, I'm just in need of strong fighters at the moment. For what? He could sense that she was being honest, which was the only reason he hadn't done anything yet. Don't worry. It's of no concern to you at the moment, I just want to know if you'd be a good fit to my peerage. This caused Naruto to raise his eyebrow. You want me to join you? Why the hell would I ever do that? He asked, voice incredulous. What exactly is a peerage anyway? He knew that they were all in two different groups, but he hadn't really digged too deep into it. A peerage is the name given to the servants who serve under a king. These words from Rias was all it took for Naruto to start getting angry. So you mean to tell me that these guys are your slaves? Naruto had thought that they were all just a bunch of devils that hung out or something, but the truth was even worse. That is correct. Each one of them were reincarnated by me to be my cute servants forever, said Rias. Naruto's anger continued to grow at this. And you want me to be your servant? Yes. Don't worry though, my family treats our servants quite well. Then there's all of the perks of becoming a devil, like a longer lifespan, magic and a lot of other things, replied Rias. She actually thought that he was considering her proposal. Naruto looked at the other people in the room besides Rias. He was about to ask another question, but it was at that time Akeno re-entered the room pushing a trolley with tea and small snacks. This was exactly what Naruto needed to calm himself down a bit. No matter how Rias tried to spin it, he knew what it meant to be a servant. Is there a choice in the matter? Rias gained a look of confusion. Of course there is, which is what I'm giving you. No. I meant to ask if everyone who is your servant had a choice in whether they would become your servant or not. This caused Rias and her peerage to gain some sad looks, which Naruto was quick to notice. So how many people do you devils force to serve you? He asked once more. This caused Rias' anger to boil over. Don't try to twist situations that you don't understand. Every one of my peerage members were saved because of what I did. Well, they might not have had a choice doesn't mean that I forced it upon them. She was almost livid now, but Naruto didn't care. Really? So what about Sona? Are those her slaves as well? Rias didn't want to, but she nodded her head in affirmative. So how many more of you devils force people to be your slaves? He finished. Rias was quick to release her power. Instantly a red and black energy burst from her body. I will not have you disrespecting devils. You will do well to know your place. Her show of power caused her peerage members to take a few steps back to not get caught with it. Naruto didn't even look bothered by it. This was a bad idea. I should have known better than to associate with devils, though I was trying not to judge you all by what I read. It seems that there was more truth to what I read than I wanted to believe, however. But this last statement, Naruto stood up and prepared to leave. He didn't want anything to do with people who forced others to be their slaves, no matter how much he wanted to return home. He would find some other way. Before he could leave, Rias spoke. You're not going anywhere. You've trespassed on devil territory and you know too much about us, so we'd be stupid to just let you go. With that statement, Naruto was suddenly surrounded. I don't think you want to do this, spoke Naruto. Yes, I do, replied Rias. She then signaled her peerage to take him down. As the four devils prepared to restrain Naruto, they were all brought down to their knees. Naruto, tired of being underestimated, decided to release a fraction of his killing intent. That and how angry he was at the moment, and it was no wonder it was so potent. None of the devils before him could even seem to breathe and were even crying, most likely from seeing either their darkest fears or their death by his hands. After about a minute, Naruto released them and watched as they all slumped to the ground, each a twitching mess. I really wish that it hadn't come to this, but I am not in the mood for a fight. Rias actually found some relief in his statement. But that short burst of power came a sudden realization. Both her and Sona's peerage together stood absolutely no chance in hell against this man. If he wanted to, he could probably end them all without even breaking a sweat. He had literally taken down her entire peerage, herself included, without having to even raise a hand at them. She knew that at this moment they were all at his mercy and could do absolutely nothing if he decided to attack, since they couldn't even control their bodies. She could only watch as he walked out the door, while silently hoping that Sona didn't follow her stupid mistake in trying to fight him. She didn't know how generous he was willing to be with sparing their lives. She also couldn't help the other thoughts that entered her mind also. She would definitely have to try and get this man in her peerage. With his power, there was no way she wouldn't be able to accomplish her goal, though she had to wonder if she'd even be able to reincarnate him. As Naruto exited the building, he was quick to notice Sona and her group all looking at him in shock. "Look. We can do this the easy way, which is you let me go and I don't bother any of you again. Or we can do this the hard way, which is I kick all of your asses and break this barrier. What'll it be?" It didn't take Sona long to give the signal for the barrier to be dropped. She had been able to sense his power from out here, and she knew that he was in a class that far exceeded anyone else's that was present. While she didn't really want to let someone with this much power and knowledge about them go, she knew it would be illogical to fight a losing battle. That didn't mean that she couldn't use this to her advantage though. With a plan in mind, she walked up to the departing blonde. "Wait. I heard what happened in there and I would like it if you didn't judge all devils based on some misinformation, so I'm willing to make a deal." Naruto narrowed his eyes at her. "And what type of deal do you think that I'll be willing to make with you?" he asked curiously. He knew that Sona was the more brainy one, so he knew to keep his guard up. "I'm willing to give you the information you need, as long as you allow me to teach it to you, along with some more about us devils." Naruto was now confused. He could tell that she was being generous, but why? "Why would you want to teach me? Besides, I'd be able to figure out whatever information you give me on my own." "I don't doubt that, but it'll be a lot faster if you actually have someone who's adept at magic teaching you, as it will be faster and allow you to reach your goal quicker." Naruto could see merit in what she was saying, plus he didn't feel any deceit. "Fine. I'll contact you within the next week or so. I'm assuming you can be ready by then." Sona just nodded at this. She was glad that he was willing to give her a chance. It wouldn't do to have someone this powerful as an enemy, especially since they didn't know exactly how powerful he was. "I can be ready." With that final statement from Sona, Naruto turned around and left the schoolyard, with hopes of getting something to eat to ease his emotions back down. Sona just watched him leave before turning towards the orc building. It was time that her and Rias had a discussion about what had happened, along with trying to figure out what they were going to do now. She just hoped that she could get Naruto to see that not all devils were alike. Back with Naruto, he was calmly walking down the street headed to one of his favorite places in town. It was the only place that sold ramen, which he had found in his first week. Luckily, he had found a few odd jobs to do around town which allowed him to make some money. "Do you really think that we can trust those devils?" asked Kurama, who had been observing everything until now. "I believe that everyone deserves a chance, so that's what I'll give Sona. I just hope that she's right." Kurama just hummed in acknowledgement. As Naruto continued walking, it wasn't long before he had reached the ramen bar. As he walked into the establishment, he was greeted by the gentleman behind the counter. "Hey, man, welcome back. What'll it be for you today?" he asked as he brought out a notepad and pen to write down the order. "The large miso with all the toppings, and keep them coming until I say stop," replied the blonde. He knew the price of the ramen, along with how much money he had on him, so he would go until he couldn't anymore. "Alright, coming right up," replied the waiter as he went into the back to relay the new order. Naruto just looked around at the few patrons the establishment had, which was a good amount. It wasn't long before the first bowl was placed in front of him. "Enjoy," spoke the waiter as he then went to serve other customers. It would be a few hours later that Naruto would leave with a full stomach. He wasn't worried about being found by the devils, since he had made it extremely difficult to sense him, along with having several transformed clones going all over the city to confuse the likes of Kaneko. As he was finished, he got up, paid what he owed, and left. He decided to just enjoy the evening as he made his way back home. It wasn't long before he reached the edge of Kuo, with the forest being before him. But the simple thought water burst forth and wrapped around his body. When that was done, Naruto took off into the forest. This was to ensure that his smell couldn't be tracked going into the forest. It wasn't long before he came to a clearing in the woods. After a quick sensory scan, he slammed his palm into the ground. A ramp soon appeared which he proceeded to walk down. As he reached the bottom of the ramp, he shot out a few fireballs at specific locations through the dark room, which lit the torches that were there. As the light from the torches illuminated the room, the ramp behind him closed. It was then that the water dropped from around his body. He then proceeded to walk towards a cot that was in a corner with a few books around it. He went and picked up an almost empty book with a pen and began writing everything he had learned that day down. After he was done, he secured his book and went to bed. This was going to be a long week, but at least he'd be closer to getting back home. He just hoped that Sona or Rias didn't try anything. Over the next few days, Naruto had continued to spy on the devils. It would be unwise not to, especially when Rias seemed to now have a grudge against him. It would be best to know beforehand if they were trying to trap him. Luckily, neither of them seemed to want to harm him anymore, though they were trying to find any information they could on him based on his physical appearance and name. Too bad they wouldn't be able to find anything. It was 6 days later that Naruto re-entered the grounds of Kuo Academy. This time he had went through the gate and requested Sona at the front desk since it was early in the day, around noon or lunchtime. After he had filled out a visitor's sheet, they had proceeded to call Sona over the PA system. Apparently she had left his name at the front desk in case he tried to contact her during school. He was grateful that she had put in the effort to make this easier for both of them. It took only a few minutes before the bell signaling lunch had been rung. A few minutes later, Tsubaki came out. "I'm here to take you to the president." With that, Naruto got up and followed her through the school. It wasn't long before he noticed the looks he was getting, mostly from the girls. He had changed his clothes for today, as his old clothes weren't in the best shape. He was now wearing black jeans and sneakers with an orange V-neck muscle shirt. He didn't think much on what he was wearing, but the girls seemed to like it. It wasn't long before he started hearing some of the whispers from both the male and female students, a lot of which actually amused the blonde and caused the girl before him to blush a bit. "Oh my god, who's he? Do you think that he's the vice president's boyfriend? I wonder if he's single. Do you think he's hitting that? Why is it always the blonde bastards that get all the girls? I would love to have him and Kiba together. Do you think he's a new student?" It was the last one that actually sent a shiver down Naruto's spine. As if he would ever subjugate himself into going back to the hell known as school. He'd rather go for round 2 with Kagaya instead, granted that there wasn't a threat to anyone else, of course. It wasn't long before the two came upon a door with the word student council plastered on it. Tsubaki quickly knocked and waited for permission to enter. Just because she was a member of the council didn't mean she could just enter, since Sona might be in the middle of an important meeting. A quick permission to enter was all it took for Tsubaki to push the door open. The two quickly entered the room and closed the door behind them. As Naruto looked around the room, he could see that everyone's attention was on him. He could also see that there was a new guy that had joined Sona during the week, though he had only been able to get his name so far. Saji, if he remembered correctly, was giving him the most suspicious look. Sona, seeing who Naruto's attention was on, decided to clear the air. "He chose to join my peerage willingly, I did not force him. The same could be said for most of my members, really." Naruto just nodded in acceptance at that. At least someone looked like they gave choices. "You're already raising my opinion of you, Sona." This caused Saji to get angry. "Hey. Who the hell do you think you are to be addressing the president like that, huh? You should address her more respectfully." He finished, which got him an annoyed look from Naruto. Before things could get out of hand, Sona spoke. "It's okay. If that's the way he wishes to address me, then I'll allow it, though I do hope that you'll allow us to get to know one another better as well," she said, addressing both boys. Naruto nodded in acceptance, while Saji just let out a huff while still looking crossly at Naruto, who could tell that he was going to be annoying. "Did you manage to get what I needed?" he asked. There was a reason he was here after all. Sona just nodded as she waved her hand. Momo brought forth a stack of books. "These are some of the beginner-level magic books. We'll start with these to ease you into everything. I'll be teaching you personally," spoke Sona as Naruto took the seat in front of her desk. "So where do we start?" asked the blonde. Imagine his surprise when Sona got up and pulled her chair around her desk. She then proceeded to place it by his side and sit in it before opening one of the books. As soon as Naruto saw the book, he cursed slightly. He couldn't understand a word that the book was saying, which would make it even harder for him to learn on his own. "I can't read that," said Naruto. It took a second before Sona realized the problem. "Of course not. Since you're not a devil, you don't have the ability to understand any language." This was truly a problem she had forgotten. She was just eager to try and have Naruto at least neutral with devils, if not on their side. "So what can we do about it?" asked the blonde. Instead of Sona it was Momo that replied. I can translate it for him if you want, President. Naruto gave the white-haired girl an appreciative look, which caused her to blush. That would be wonderful, Momo, thank you. Replied Sona. She really liked the fact that her peerage was putting in the extra effort to help her smooth things out. This just seemed to piss Saji off even more. I'm going to go get the lunch. What does everyone want? He asked as the other members began giving him their orders. Would you like anything, Mr. Uzumaki? Asked Sona, which just further annoyed Saji. No thanks, I'm fine. Replied Naruto. And please just call me Naruto. Being called Mr. makes me feel old. How old are you exactly? Asked Sona after she was done talking with Saji and letting him go on his way. Well, at the moment I'm 17, why? Nothing. It's just surprising to see someone in my age group as powerful as you. Finished Sona. Her, Rias, Sarayarg and Sakvara were the 4 strongest devils of their generation, earning the title of the Rookie 4, and she doubted all of them together could beat this man. If they added their peerages then they might stand a chance, but even that she doubted. So she would do her best to get herself in his good graces. She wouldn't try and manipulate or control him, just try to be his friend. It wasn't long before Saji came back and handed out everyone's lunches. He was still giving Naruto the stink eye, and Naruto was still just ignoring him. It wasn't long before a somewhat comfortable silence covered the room, with the only noise being Naruto and Sona studying. The time for lunch to end came faster than some would have liked, and not fast enough for others. As the members of the student council got up and prepared to leave for their final class, Sona turned to Naruto. If you want to, you can stay in here until school's out so we can go back to studying. Sure, I'll wait here. Spoke the blonde. Sona just nodded and left, her peerage following behind her. Are we really going to just leave that guy unsupervised in there? Asked Saji. He couldn't see the point in the president's choice. Yes, we are. Naruto's already been through my office numerous times, so there's not really much he hasn't seen before. This is also a show of trust. By me willingly leaving him in there with nobody to watch him shows that I'm trusting him. The rest of her peerage just nodded in acceptance, though Saji didn't like it. Back with Naruto, he was still trying to get some type of understanding from the book in his hand. Seeing that he couldn't understand the words, he soon decided to give up for now. He sat back in his chair and looked around the room. He knew that Sona was trying to show that she was willing to trust him, so he wouldn't do anything to break her trust. It wasn't long before boredom struck him, though. He tried to hold out, to find anything that might catch his attention, but there was nothing. Having nothing better to do, Naruto got up and exited the student council room. He doubted Sona would get mad at him for doing a bit of exploring. But that he took off in a random direction. Well, it wasn't his first time being in the school building, it was his first time not having a set destination. He calmly walked the halls while being careful to not be seen by any staff. He wasn't going to allow some dumb situation of him being mistaken as a student or anything like that. He soon managed to find himself in front of a window that had a good view of the yard, and he found himself annoyed by what he saw. It was 3 boys that were peeking through a hole in the wall. He would recognize the looks on their faces anywhere, having seen it enough on Jiraiya's face, bless his soul. This caused a mischievous smile to form on Naruto's face. He hadn't pulled a prank on anybody in a while, being busy with some life-threatening matters, so it was about time for one. He just needed something to stop the 3 from escaping. It didn't take him long to find some rope what was perfect for what he wanted it for. He quickly exited the building and headed towards the 3 perverts. He quickly set up the trap in the only direction that they could run in. After everything was set, Naruto took a deep breath before screaming. Hey! There's some perverts out here. Instantly the 3 turned around and tried to run. They immediately sprung the trap, which caused the rope to spring up and wrap around the 3 of them. Confused by what had happened, they were surprised when they saw Naruto standing there. Hey! Who the hell are you? Asked the one with glasses. Who I am is not important. I think the real question should be what they're going to do to you guys. Spoke Naruto while gesturing to something the 3 tied-up students couldn't see. They slowly turned around to see their worst fear. The entire kendo club stood before them, and a lot of them had their practice swords with them. It was then that 2 girls stepped forward and addressed Naruto. Are you the one who did this? Asked the one with her hair in pigtails. Naruto just nodded. I saw them looking through that hole in the wall and knew they were up to no good. I decided that I couldn't just ignore something like that, so I decided to trap them so you girls can do what you want with them. Spoke Naruto with his signature grin on his face. This caused the 2 girls to blush at the hot blonde before them. I'm Hashirama, said the one who had spoken before. And I'm Caddis, said the other. Thanks for catching these 3 for us. They always spy on us and think that they can get away with it, but not this time. She finished with a dark look on her face, which was mirrored by all of the other girls. No problem, said Naruto while looking at the 3 perverts. Have fun you 3, and enjoy your punishment. he said before turning around and walking away. He completely ignored the screams for help and mercy that was coming from behind him. I wonder what else I can find to do in this school, thought the blonde as he continued to try and waste some time until school was out. He hoped that he could find something interesting to do until school was out. Why the hell did he come here so early anyway? As Naruto continued his trek around the school grounds, it wasn't long before he came upon a PE class in the yard doing stretches with some familiar faces in it. He watched as Rias and Akeno, both wearing the school's skimpy gym uniforms, were doing their warm-ups. They were the only ones really focusing on them, since the rest of the class had their attention on the two girls. What's the point of those uniforms? It's like they were designed by perverts, thought the blonde to himself. He was about to just walk off, but he had caught the attention of the two girls. Akeno, seeing him leaving, decided to try and talk to him. She didn't like the way he treated Rias, nor how he thought that she was a bad person. But that she got up and quickly ran to try and catch the blonde. This action caught the attention of the entire class, since it wasn't every day you see one of the two great ladies of Kuo chasing after some guy. Hey, who's that? Is he new here? Why is she talking to him? He's pretty hot. Those two look great together. These were just some of the statements that Rias was overhearing from her classmates. She would have went and followed Akeno, but based on their last meeting, she didn't want to aggravate Naruto any more than she already had. What does Ms. Himejima think she's doing walking out of class like that? Asked their teacher, a woman by the name of Ms. Kimiko. She's just catching up with an old friend that she hasn't seen in a while, she'll be back soon, was Ria's response. She was lying, of course, but she wanted to give her queen a chance to try and smooth things out with the blonde. Fine, but she better hurry up so she doesn't lose any grades, replied Ms. Kimiko. If Akeno wasn't one of the best students in the school, then she wouldn't have been so lenient. Being one of the teacher's favorites had its perks. Rias gave the woman a grateful smile. She just hoped that Akeno could get Naruto to see that she wasn't the bad guy in this situation. Good luck, Akeno, thought the Riti to herself. She knew that if there was anyone who would be able to show she was a good person, it would be Akeno. Back with Akeno, she had quickly caught up to the blonde, who didn't even acknowledge her presence, which caused her to pout cutely. She never really had a problem catching someone's attention, so to be blatantly ignored annoyed her a little. Are you just going to pretend that I don't exist? Asked a young girl with a frown on her face. I have no interest in what your master sent you to say, replied Naruto, which caused a frown on Akeno's face to deepen. I wasn't sent by the president, I'm here on my own behalf, spoke Akeno, which finally got Naruto to look at her. She was glad that she was making some progress with him, since he really didn't seem to like them, or at least not like Rias. What is it exactly that you want then? Asked Naruto, who was still walking. I only wish for the same chance you gave to Ms. Sona and her peerage. A chance to talk and show you that the president isn't as bad as you might think. Just give me one chance, then you can make up your mind. He could hear the pleading tone in her voice. He really didn't want to risk it, but he could tell that Akeno wasn't lying to him. Is that really what you believe, or what you've been forced to believe? Asked the blonde. This caused Akeno to become angry. Look. I don't care what you say about me, but I won't allow you to talk bad about the president when you don't even want to get to see the real her, spoke Akeno with some venom in her voice. As she was talking, she had walked up to Naruto and began poking him in the chest with some lightning sparking off of her hands. Realizing what she was doing, she quickly backed up with a shocked look on her face. She had thought that she might have just made things worse, but she was a little confused when she saw the smile on Naruto's face. So you're willing to risk angering me just to make your point? I guess you really do believe in Rias, so I'll give you, and only you, one chance to prove me wrong. Akeno smiled happily and quickly hugged the blonde, which caused him to tense. Thank you so much. Don't worry, I'll be sure to show you how much of a wonderful person the president is, so you'll change your mind. Naruto just continued to stand there with a nervous look on his face. He didn't really know what to do in this situation, and he could also feel the eyes of several students on them. Thankfully Akeno finally let him go, but noticed his nervous expression. Oh my. Did I embarrass the big strong man? Don't worry, I like that expression on your face, spoke Akeno in a sultry tone, reverting back a bit to her normal personality. Before Naruto could respond, he was interrupted by his partner. Hey, Naruto, I just sensed a large amount of negative emotions appear on the edge of town, spoke Kurama. Hearing this, Naruto looked away from Akeno and closed his eyes, instantly entering sage mode. It took him only a few seconds to find the source of the emotions, since they all had weird energies, though 4 of them matched the energy in the girl before him. Akeno, seeing the serious expression on Naruto's face all of a sudden, thought that she might have went too far and caused problems between them. That thought was erased as Naruto, now out of sage mode, looked at her with a curious expression. What exactly are you? He asked, gaining a confused look from her. What do you mean? You already know I'm a devil. Replied Akeno, who was truly confused by the weird question. She knew that Naruto had been spying on them for the last 3 months and that he knew she was a devil, so what was with the question? I mean, besides a devil. I can sense another energy in you, one that no one else in either devil group has. Said Naruto. This time it was Akeno who tensed. There was no way he could be talking about that, right? I don't know what you're talking about. Stated Akeno, though the tension in her voice could be heard a mile away. She just really hoped that he would drop the subject so she wouldn't have to remember that part of her. She tried to give him a smile to help him believe that she didn't know what he meant, but it was so forced that you could literally see her face twitching from where she was forcing herself to keep the smile on her face. She could tell by his own expression he wasn't buying it. I can tell that you don't like this topic, but this information might be important. Naruto could feel her hate start to rise ever since he had brought up her strange energy, but it wasn't aimed at him. For whatever reason her hate was aimed at herself, letting him know that she hated whatever that part of her was, but he needed to know. With the amount of negative emotions he had felt from that group, he knew they were trouble. It wouldn't be smart to approach potential hostiles with no information on who or what they were, but since there was someone who was just like them before him, he would use her to get whatever answers he could. I get the feeling that you don't like that part of you for some reason, but I need to know what that part of you is. Spoke Naruto, hoping that she would give him something. Why the hell does it even matter to you anyway? Growled Akeno. Naruto contemplated if he should tell her or not. Seeing that if she knew why she might be willing to give him more info, he decided to tell her. I just sensed 4 individuals with that same energy appear at the outskirts of town, so I'd like to know exactly what they are, since they appear to be threats. Said Naruto. This caused Akeno to widen her eyes in shock, which quickly turned to anger. Are you sure they have energy similar to what you sense from me? She asked. She really hoped he was making a mistake, but she doubted it. She had a sinking suspicion that his sensing capabilities were extraordinary. How else would he be able to identify every supernatural being in town if it wasn't? I'm pretty sure. I also can tell that they're not here for anything good, though I don't really know what their goal is. With this statement Akeno began biting her lip nervously. I've got to inform the president about this. Will you be willing to come with me so you can give us the location of these new threats? She hoped he would come, but she knew she couldn't force him. You know, if you want my help, then I want some honesty. What are they, and why would they be here? Asked Naruto. Akeno didn't want to answer that first question. While she did want his trust, she didn't want people to know what she was. Then she actually thought about it. Even if she didn't tell him, he would figure it out eventually. Either from Sona and her peerage, or just by going and investigating himself, which she knew from experience he was pretty good at. With a sigh, she decided to take the plunge. They are fallen angels, one of the natural enemies of devils. I'm also half fallen by birth though, as you've noticed. I don't like that part of me or any fallen for that matter. Naruto nodded at her explanation. He wouldn't force her to tell him why she hated the fallen so much, since neither of them really trusted each other, but he was at least grateful for the knowledge he had just gained. So that's how a fallen angel feels to my senses. I was truly curious about your energy from I first saw you, since I had never met a fallen. Akeno was glad that he wasn't pushing her for more details, but there was still something she had to do. So, will you accompany me to talk with the president? She asked. Naruto just shook his head negatively. No. You go and inform her of what's going on. I'll go and see what our fallen guests are up to. Can you also tell Sona that something came up if I am not back by the time school is out? Akeno wanted to try and dissuade him, but she knew that there was nothing she could do. Alright, but be careful. We still have to have a conversation, and I can't do that if you're not around. She tried to give him a smile, but it was still forced. Naruto just looked at her and nodded. She was doing a lot to try and get him on Ria's side, but he wouldn't be that easy to manipulate. He did want to get the full story though, so he would let her say her piece and make an informed decision then. But that Naruto turned around and quickly ran toward the school gates to leave, though he made sure to keep his speed at normal human levels. As he made it to some place where no one else was around, he disappeared in a blur. Seeing him leaving, Akeno turned around and went back to class. Luckily their whole conversation had only taken a few minutes, so she hadn't really missed much. Seeing her returning, Ms. Kimiko was the first to speak. How nice of you to join us, Ms. Himejima. She said while giving the girl a pointed look. I apologize for my rude departure, Ms. Kimiko, it won't happen again. I just really needed to talk to him while I had the chance, replied Akeno with an apologetic tone in her voice and giving a slight bow to her teacher. Yes, well, don't let it happen again. Luckily you didn't take long, so there isn't anything you missed. Of course, and thank you for understanding. Spoke Akeno, putting as much gratitude as she could in her speech. She then looked towards Rias as everyone else began focusing back on class. So how did it go? Asked Rias. I got him to agree to give me a chance to speak on your behalf, but we have a problem. This caused Rias to narrow her eyes as she thought that Naruto might have gotten more offended by something Akeno said or something. What's the matter? She asked nervously. She really didn't want to get even deeper on the blonde's bad side. Did he get angry at something you said or something? She really needed to find a way to fix the situation. No, we haven't had a chance to talk yet. The problem is that we have 4 fallen that just entered town and, according to Naruto, they're not here for anything good. Spoke Akeno with quite a bit of hatred in her voice, which Rias understood why. This caused Rias to gain a contemplative look. So where is Naruto? She asked. She had seen him run off, but now she knew why. He went to check them out himself and said to inform Ms. Sona about it in case he's not back by the time school's out. Rias thought about what she had just heard. She knew that Naruto had a good chance of figuring out what the Fallen wanted, but should she allow him to? This was her and Sona's territory after all, and they couldn't just allow anyone to go about doing as they pleased, since any problem caused would be blamed on the two of them. Then she remembered that Naruto was pretty good at sneaking around. Fine. We'll let him do his snooping and hopefully find out the information from him when he returns. Spoke Rias. Even if he didn't want to talk to her, she would still get the info from Sona when she found out since the territory was both of theirs. Are you sure that it's a wise choice? We wouldn't want him to do something that might cause problems later on. Stated Akeno, which was a good point. For now we have no real choice but to trust him and hope that things turn out okay, and if not then we'll handle said problems when they arise. Also get the word out to everyone, including Sona, that I wish to have a meeting on the situation after school. Spoke Rias. Akeno nodded at her orders as she would have to wait until class was over to use her phone to contact everyone. She really hoped that this situation wouldn't end badly, though for who she didn't know. Naruto had easily tracked the 4 signatures he had sent to the old abandoned church. He had been keeping track of how much people were in the building, which was a lot. He could sense at least 50 other presences had appeared in the church in the last 60 minutes, besides the 4 fallen. This made him wonder even more what they could possibly be up to. This was an invasion force at least with the number of devils he knew of in the area, which wasn't good news for anyone. He could also sense the barrier that they had put up, which he noticed dulled them from his senses a bit. The only reason he hadn't tried to get any closer was because he didn't know what all the barrier was capable of, and he wasn't trying to fight with over 50 combatants with unknown abilities. So for now he would just observe and try and get more info from Sona once he returned to the school. Seeing as there wasn't anything else he could do at the moment, he created a simple clone to continue observing. He then blurred away once more, this time heading towards the school. He had arrived after the school bell had rung to signal the end of the day, so he had to walk through a few of the departing students that were giving him mixed looks. He quickly began to make his way towards the student council room, but stopped when he sensed that Sona and her group were with Rias in the old building. He sighed as he changed his directions. He would put up with Rias for now if he had to, but any sign of her trying anything and he'd leave. It wasn't long before he reached the old building and entered. He walked inside and headed towards Rias' office where everyone was. As he reached the door he knocked, not wanting to just barge in, and waited for a response. It was a few seconds before Kiba came and peeked out the door, with his eyes widening in surprise when he saw who it was. He quickly stepped back and opened the door to allow the other blonde entrance. As Naruto stepped inside he noticed that he was getting a few odd looks from everyone. Welcome back to our clubroom, Naruto, though I didn't expect you to come here. Spoke Rias. Naruto just shrugged before responding. Since Sona and her peerage were already here, I figured it would have been a waste to go all the way back to the student council's office, so I just came here instead. Well, welcome back. Did you manage to get any information on our intruders? Asked Sona. She was glad that Naruto had come here, since she really did want him and Rias to mend things between them. I managed to get a basic number of people, but I didn't get to see them since they have a barrier up and have been teleporting directly into the old church. Both devil leaders nodded at this. They now knew where the fallen were staying and a bit about their defenses. How much potential enemies are we talking about here? Asked Rias, curiously. Naruto just looked at her and for a second everyone thought he wasn't going to answer her. Before Sona could ask him he spoke. When I left there were 50 unknown combatants with weird energies that I don't know, not including the 4 fallen angels. This caused all of the devil's eyes to widen. What the hell did the fallen need with that many people, and why did they come to a territory owned by devils? This whole situation was looking worse and worse as more time passed. Do you have any idea on what they might be here for? Asked Rias again. Naruto just sighed as he thought about all of the info he knew so far. If you want my opinion, then I think that they've come here for an invasion. They are amassing a small army while trying to keep themselves hidden, and add in that none of them have any good intentions, then I'd prepare for an attack on either you all or the humans in town. Both Rias and Sona frowned deeper at this. If anything happened in this territory then it fell on them. They couldn't allow the fallen to attack anyone or it would look bad for the both of them. Add in the fact that they were both heiresses and the younger sisters of two of the four great Satans and it was clear to see a war breaking out according to what they or the fallen did. They would have to play this smart. Not only to protect their respective peerages but also to avoid the chance of war breaking out. As Sona and Rias began discussing with each other what they should do, Naruto was once again approached by Akeno. "Would you like some refreshment? I wouldn't mind making something for you for all the work you've done for us," she asked. Naruto was about to decline but decided against it. He hadn't eaten anything yet and he was going to go and continue studying once he left the orc clubroom and went back to Sona's office. "Sure, I could use some snacks," said Naruto. This caused Akeno to give him a beaming smile. "Wonderful. Just give me a few minutes and I'll have something prepared," spoke the half-fallen girl. With that she quickly exited the room and Naruto decided to take a seat to wait for Sona to finish up. He took a seat next to Momo, who immediately began blushing a bit. "I'm almost finished translating a few of the spell books so that you'll be able to read them on your own," said Momo. Naruto looked at her and gave her one of his beaming smiles. "Thanks a lot, Momo. You're a real lifesaver. If there's something I can do to repay you then just let me know." Momo smiled at this and tried to think of what she could ask for. She quickly came to a decision. "Would you tell me a bit about yourself sometime? All you've been doing is learning about us, but we don't know anything about you. I'd like to get to know you better." Naruto could tell that she wasn't lying. She actually wanted to know a bit about him. "Okay. Pick a date and we'll have a private talk where I'll tell you a bit about me," said Naruto. He would only give her some basic info, nothing on his abilities or anything like that. Well, he had just meant that the two of them would talk. Momo had decided to try and turn it into a date. She didn't know why, but she just found the blonde interesting. Add in the fact that he was quite good looking and powerful, and it was no wonder she was slightly attracted to him, though she was sure it wasn't love. So she would use this new opportunity to plan something so she could try and find out what kind of guy he was. She liked guys that were hard-working, and she doubted he got that strong without working for it. She had also seen how hard he was studying, even though it was only one session. There was one thing she needed to know for this. "Do you have a favorite food or something you like to do?" she asked the blonde. This information would help with the date since she could make sure they had or did something he liked, which would hopefully make him more comfortable. All the devils could tell that Naruto didn't really trust them, after all. "Well, I like ramen, and something I like to do is training, I guess." Momo was happy with this information. She would have to make sure ramen was present since she really doubted Naruto would train with her around. It was obvious he was keeping his abilities secret, once more showing his lack of trust in them. Momo didn't mind though. Trust was something that had to be earned, and with the horrible impression he had of devils she knew it would take time to earn his. That's not to say that the devils trusted Naruto either, though. He was still a powerful unknown that had been gathering data on all of them without their knowledge and could very well be here to cause harm to them. This entire situation all came down to an old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and that was what both sides were obviously doing. Both sides were just waiting to see if the other side was a friend or an enemy. Before anything else could be said, Akeno re-entered the room pushing a trolley, the same one she had used the last time he was here. As she entered she immediately began pouring tea and handing out snacks to everyone. As she passed Naruto his share he looked at them curiously. "You didn't put anything in these, did you?" He wasn't dumb enough to just trust the people he was surrounded by. Akeno just gave him an amused look. "Don't worry, nothing was done to any of the refreshments. I'm trying to earn your trust, not your anger," replied Akeno, smile still on her face. Naruto sensed no deceit and decided to just go for it. He was actually quite surprised when he tasted the treats. They were actually quite good and the tea was blended perfectly. "Wow, Akeno, if you keep cooking like this you'll make a great wife to someone someday." This caused a slight blush to appear on Akeno's cheeks. "Oh my, are you offering?" asked Akeno, teasingly. Naruto just shook his head in amusement as he already knew about Akeno's flirtatious and teasing attitude from observing her. This also caused a bit of anger from Momo, though it did give her an idea to better improve their upcoming time together. She would have to go and do some studying for what she wanted. But that everyone continued making some small talk as Rias and Sona continued planning, and Saji gave Naruto and Kiba angry looks from time to time, Kiba because of who he was in school, and Naruto because of the attention he was getting. "Naruto, can we ask you for a favor?" asked Sona, who was finally finished speaking with Rias. Her statement had gotten everyone's attention on her. "What type of favor?" asked the blonde. He wasn't just going to say yes without knowing what it was they wanted. "Me and Rias wish for you to continue to observe the fallen and their comrades, since you have shown great skill in doing so. We both will also owe you a favor of your choice and are trusting you to use it respectfully and wisely," spoke Sona. They had discussed this deal at length and had agreed to try it so that they could try and gain some more of the blonde's trust. They also left the favor open for whatever he decided to see what he would try to do. If he requested something that they didn't agree with, then they just wouldn't do it, consequences be damned. This was also to get a better reading on his character. "So let me get this straight. I spy on the fallen in town for the both of you and I get a favor in return from you too. What's the catch?" asked Naruto. He knew that this had to be some type of test or something. "There is no catch. You're doing a favor for us, so it's only right that we do a favor for you," spoke Rias. She was glad that she could actually have a decent conversation with the blonde. Maybe she would be able to get him to like her. Naruto thought about the offer for a second. It was a bit too good to be true, but he didn't really have anything to lose. He was watching the fallen anyway, which was why he had left a clone to observe them. He might as well get something for all of his work, and he didn't know if or when he would need something from the devils in the future. "Sure, I accept," he said, which caused the two girls to smile gratefully. Naruto had better espionage skills than anyone in either peerage, so to get his help was a huge win for them. "Thank you," said Rias with a beatific smile aimed at the blonde, which caused him to begin scratching the back of his head as he gave her a nod. "Since this matter is now being handled, I think that this meeting is over," spoke Sona. With that, everyone started saying their goodbyes. Sona quickly left, followed by her peerage. As Naruto was about to leave, Rias spoke once more. "Naruto, I just want you to know that you're welcome back here at any time. I also hope that I can show you that I'm really not as bad as you might think." Naruto just looked at her for a few seconds before he also left, causing Rias to sigh. "Do you think that we'll be able to change his mind?" asked Kiba. "I don't know. We can only hope that Akeno is able to get through to him and show him that we're all just a part of a system that has been in place for centuries," said Rias tiredly. Sona, her peerage and Naruto quickly exited the building and began heading back towards their office. "So are you going to continue your observations today, or are you coming to finish studying?" asked Sona. "Don't worry, I've got eyes on our targets already, so I'll be returning with you to finish studying." This statement caught the attention of all the devils. It probably had to do with his still unknown abilities. "That seems to be quite convenient for us. Are you perhaps using a familiar, or do you have others that you are working with?" asked Sona casually while trying to get any info she could. None of the above. This was the only response she got from the blonde as he continued to walk forward. This caused Sona to frown a bit before she smirked. She loved a great brain teaser. She would just have to work a bit harder to get the knowledge she desired, without angering or offending her target, of course. They continued to walk in silence from there. It wasn't long before they had finally reached their office. As they entered, everyone returned to their respective desks, with Naruto once more taking the seat he had previously occupied. This time Sona didn't sit next to him as the two went over what they had already studied. They would all spend the next 2 hours there, Naruto studying and everyone else finishing up their work for the council and school. Soon it was time for everyone to return to their respective homes. "Naruto, here's the books I've translated so far," spoke Momo as she handed him a few books. Naruto just smiled at her and thanked her once more, which also caused her to blush once more. Then Tsubaki made a teleportation circle to send everyone home. "I would have liked for you to be able to be teleported home as well, but the circles only works for those who come under the owner's family or peerage," spoke Sona. This was new info for Naruto. That meant that only Sona, her family and her peerage could use her teleportation circle. "Is it the same for everyone?" he asked. "Yes. You can make it specific for a family or group, which will stop anybody else from being able to use it." Naruto was glad at this, since it meant only him would be able to use his own once he figured out how to make it. "Thanks for the explanation. I guess I'll be seeing you all tomorrow. I'll also try and keep you informed with anything I might find out," spoke Naruto as he got up and left the room, leaving only Sona and Tsubaki left inside. "He really is an interesting character," said Tsubaki. "Yes, he is. Now it's only a matter of time before I find out just how interesting he really is," replied Sona, getting a giggle from her queen. With that, the two girls disappeared like the rest of the council to their home. Over the next few days, Naruto kept a close watch on the fallen using clones while he studied. He had noticed that they seemed to be observing a boy by the name of Issei, who also happened to be one of the perverts that Naruto had pranked, and it seemed that Rias was doing the same thing. He still had no idea what they wanted from the pervert, but today his luck pulled through as one of the fallen had left the church. The clone had followed the young-looking girl who wore a school uniform that Naruto recognized as one from another school in the area. It consisted of a dark red jacket with a letter P embroidered on it in gold, a white undershirt, a red bow and a green skirt with a thin white strip around the lower end of it. He silently wondered to himself what she was up to, but he soon got his answer. He watched as she finally approached Issei and introduced herself as Yuma Mono. He then watched as she asked Issei if he'd go out with her. Issei, being the pervert Naruto knew he was, accepted her proposal immediately. He never even questioned how a girl from a completely different school that he had never interacted with knew about him or why she wanted to date him. He just took her bullshit story to heart and went with it, clearly thinking more with his lower head. Naruto just sighed as he overheard the two making plans to go out during the weekend. He wasn't sure why the Fallen was interested in Issei, but he had a suspicion. Issei was one of the few humans he could feel something in, though what it was he didn't know. He really had to wonder to himself how much weird things and beings were in this world. With a sigh the clone created another clone and then had it disperse itself to transfer the knowledge back to the original. With that task done he went and continued following Yuma. In the student council room the original Naruto looked up from the book he was studying. I can now say for sure that the Fallen are targeting Issei, though I'm not completely sure why. He said, catching the attention of the other occupants in the room. He then went on to explain to everyone what he had seen and heard from the meeting. He watched as Sona went over what he had just told her, probably coming up with a plan on what to do and how to use the situation to her advantage. I see. So that means Rias might be right about her suspicion of him. Now all that's left is to see what she'll do about everything. Spoke Sona. Issei was Ria's interest, so she would let her handle the situation. Naruto just nodded as he went back to studying, though he did wonder what Rias had planned for the boy. He didn't really care what she did, as long as she didn't try to manipulate Issei or force him into her peerage. With a sigh he closed the book before him as he had learned everything he could from it thanks to Momo translating everything and the wonder that was shadow clones. Over the past few days he had learned quite a lot and he felt that he was almost ready to try and make a transportation circle. I'm done with these beginner books. Said Naruto, getting shocked looks from everyone. Really now? That's quite impressive since Aji started learning before you, yet you have far surpassed him in his studies. Said Sona, which earned a frown from Saji. Hey, I'm doing my best. I'm just learning about all this supernatural stuff. A month ago I didn't even know anything about this stuff, so I'd say I'm doing pretty good. Was Saji's reply, which gained him amused smirks from the rest of the council. I guess that is true, but I'm sure that you won't let Naruto best you for long. Said Sona while giving Saji a smile. Instantly a blush appeared on his face. It was no secret to anyone there that he had a crush on Sona, which she had no problem using to motivate him. Yes, President. Was Saji's reply as he whipped out his own copies of the spell books. No way in hell would he let Naruto get all of Sona's attention. He would master everything he could quickly so she would praise him also. Naruto just watched the scene in amusement. While he knew that Sona was manipulating Saji, she wasn't doing it in a bad way. It was the same way that pervy sage used to use teaching him a new jutsu as encouragement to get him to do what he wanted. So, do you have any plans for the weekend? Asked Sona towards Naruto. This caused him to raise an eyebrow at her question. Not really, why? He asked in response. I just think that it's time that start teaching you more about devils, so I want to do it on Saturday when I have no distractions from school. Naruto nodded at this since he did also agree to let her teach him more about devils. Sona and her peerage had already gone above and beyond in trying to teach him about magic, so he guessed that it was about time to let her teach him about devils so he could get a better picture. Sure, that's fine. Do you want me to come here or did you have someplace else to talk in mind? Asked Naruto. You can just meet me at the front of the school on Saturday. Naruto once more nodded in acceptance at her proposal. Sure, I'll be there. This gained a small smile from Sona which Naruto knew was very rare since she was the always serious type. She mainly smiled at Saji to motivate him, along with a rare smile at her other peerage members every once in a while. Good. Meet me here at 8 AM and we'll go from there if that's not too early for you. That time's good since I don't really have anything else to do. Sona nodded at this, glad that she'd be able to teach him a bit more about her kind and hopefully change his mind. It was at this time that Momo walked up to Naruto. I've finished translating a few more books, though I wasn't expecting you to need them this soon. Said the white-haired girl as she handed him a few more books. Wow, you really are amazing. Said Naruto. He didn't know that he had just deepened the crush she had on him in the last few days. Thank you for the compliment, but it's my pleasure to help you. This got the girl a smile from Naruto and amused looks from the rest of the council except Saji, who was too busy in his books trying to study. Momo, with a blush on her face after noticing the looks she was getting from everyone, just nodded and quickly returned to her desk. She knew the other girls wouldn't let her live this down and would no doubt tease her a lot in the coming days. As Naruto began studying his new books, Sona was busy observing him. She had thought long and hard on the best way to teach Naruto about devils. She knew that if she went with the history books he might not like it, so she had came up with another way. She had been planning this since they had made their deal and had made sure that she finished all of her work so she could have the whole day free. She just hoped that everything would work out in the end for everyone. But the Sai Naruto got up and began packing them away in a bag that Sona had given him. "I'm going to head out early today, so I guess I'll see you all tomorrow," said Naruto. With everyone giving him a farewell, he quickly left the office and soon the school. He wanted to hurry up and get through these new books, and to do that he needed privacy so he could use his clones. There was also another reason that he wanted to leave early. It was due to his clone deciding to try and do things on his own, which caused Naruto to now have a certain Pakage waiting for him at his base of operations, as he liked to call it. Once again, school was already out, so he didn't have to worry about running into anyone, though thanks to his study sessions with Sona, he had become a regular sight around the school. He had also caused a few rumors to spread, such as him being in relationships or even controlling or threatening members of the Orkan Student Council, due to some of the times he had been seen with them, because some people thought he was a delinquent. But the groan of annoyance Naruto disappeared in a blur. It didn't take him long to reach back to his base, while making sure to take all of his precautions. As the ramp lowered and Naruto walked down it, he came upon two figures. The first one was obviously his clone, who he sent an annoyed look to. The second one was the hogtied and unconscious form of Yuma Amano. "Why the hell did you kidnap her? Sona and Rias were supposed to handle the fallen problem, we're only supposed to gather the information," he asked his clone. "That's true, but you know we probably can't trust them. Add in the fact that Rias is also watching Issei doesn't make me feel too secure with how they might handle things," replied the clone. Naruto just sighed since he couldn't really get mad at the clone. He would have literally done the same thing, the clone was him after all. "At least I can get some information about what exactly it is they want from her. Hopefully she's willing to talk." The clone nodded and quickly dispelled himself. He was the clone of the clone that had captured Yuma. The original clone was still watching the church and keeping tabs on the rest of the fallen and their allies. After Naruto sorted through the new memories, he found at least one silver lining. His clone had caught Yuma off guard, so she had no idea who had captured her. He could use this to his advantage since he didn't want her to be able to recognize him. But that he began putting his plan in motion. He would have to play this right since he didn't want the devils to be implicated in anything. The only reason for this was because Sona had explained how certain things could start a war between the three biblical factions when he asked why they didn't just confront the fallen. Naruto really didn't want that, since humans would most likely be the main casualties in this war, so he would have to act as an independent party that just happened to come upon the fallen angel and wanted to satisfy his own curiosity. After making sure he had a good plan, he simply waited for the girl to wake up. It didn't take long before Yuma began to stir, which Naruto was ready for. He had already used the transformation jutsu to change his form to that of Tsunade Senju. The reason for this was because him and Tsunade were complete opposites in gender, age, characteristics and a lot more. He needed to be someone that could in no way be linked to him. And the chance of Tsunade coming to this world was extremely low, so he didn't have to worry about making problems for the previous Hokage. The only problem he might have with this plan was if Yuma had enhanced sensing capabilities where she could remember his energy, or an enhanced sense of smell, since he couldn't change how he smelled. As Yuma finally began to come to her senses, Naruto spoke. "Well, it's about time that you woke up. I almost thought that I had hit you too hard." Now she, said in a calm voice. As Naruto spoke, Yuma began recalling what had happened, with her getting knocked unconscious. Yuma's eyes darted around the torchlit cavern, though she could see everything clearly thanks to her night vision. Yuma quickly focused on where the voice had come from to see her captor. "Who are you, and what do you want?" the girl growled. She was quick to notice that she was tied up, but these ropes wouldn't be a problem for her to escape from. It just left her with a few other problems. Who the hell was this bitch that had knocked her out, and what was it that she wanted? She also needed to try and get a read on this bitch's strength, so she would act like a good captive for now. "Who I am is of no concern to you, I just need to know who you are, Ms. Fallen, and why you've been stalking around town the last few days and have a small army hidden in the church," asked the transformed Naruto. This caused Yuma's eyes to narrow. It was clear to Yuma that this woman, whoever she was aware of her being in town, as well as what she was and the fact that there were others with her. That made this situation even more dangerous, but if she knew she was a fallen, then she also should have known that ropes wouldn't be able to hold her. That either meant that she was very confident in her abilities or very stupid about the power a fallen angel held. She decided to try and find out which one it was. Yuma easily snapped the ropes tying her down and stood up while revealing her wings and releasing a bit of her power. The blonde before her didn't show any type of reaction to what she did, showing that she didn't see Yuma as a threat. Naruto just observed Yuma's form, instantly noticing the difference in wing designs. While the devils had wings that reminded Naruto of bats, the fallen seemed to have wings that reminded Naruto of crows, which also brought up some memories of Itachi for Naruto. Uma didn't like that the woman before her didn't seem fazed, so she decided to go a little further. She quickly formed an almost 10-foot-long light spear, using way more power than she normally would, and threw it at her captor with all the force she could muster. Uma smirked cruelly as her attack rocketed towards the blonde bitch, but that smile instantly disappeared when her light spear was caught casually in the woman's hand. The lack of any type of reaction from the contact also served to prove that she wasn't a devil. "This is an interesting technique, quite strong also," said the disguised Naruto as he looked over the spear he still held in his hand. He truly did find the technique interesting. "How the hell did you catch my attack so easily? That shouldn't be possible for you based on the amount of power I can sense from you," inquired Uma, truly a bit worried now. "You're basing your assumption of how strong I am on what you can sense of my power, but did you ever stop to think about what you couldn't sense?" inquired Naruto with an amused tone. It was at this moment Naruto released a bit of his power, which caused the room they were in to begin shaking. She also noticed weird markings, seals, appearing along all the walls, ceiling, and floor. Uma could literally feel her legs shaking at this point. This woman before her was clearly far more powerful than she let on and could possibly end her faster than she could react. It was at this moment that Uma decided to play nice and potentially save her life. "My name is Rainer." This caused Naruto to look at her in curiosity. "I'm sorry?" asked Naruto, slightly confused since he wasn't really listening at the moment and had been busy inspecting the spear that was still in his hand. "My real name is Rainer, and I believe you asked me what I was in town for." Naruto just proceeded to crush the light spear before looking at the now named Rainer. "Yes, I did. Would you like to tell me now?" he asked, voice still calm. Rainer just nodded yes. She then went on to tell him about her mission of observing Issei to see if he had a powerful sacred gear, which Naruto had no clue what it was but had to act like he did. She also began explaining some of the other things they were doing, like apparently waiting for a nun, though she refused to say why. After Naruto had gotten all of the info he could from Rainer, while making sure she wasn't lying, he decided to ask one more question. "You said your mission was to observe Issei, but I could feel the killing intent from you. Were you planning to go against your orders?" This caused Rainer to begin sweating a bit. She had hoped to be done with this whole thing, but it appeared her captor was more observant than she thought. She was considering if she should lie, but decided against it just in case. "I was going to kill him, whether he had a strong sacred gear or not," replied Rainer honestly. The frown that appeared on the other woman's face showed her that it was the wrong answer. "So you were going to kill him for no reason, that's too bad," spoke Naruto as he got up and began approaching Rainer. "Why do you care so much if I kill one pervert or not?" asked Rainer while taking precautionary steps away from the still approaching blonde. "It's not Issei himself that I care about, but the senseless killing of any being. I'm someone who believes that everyone should be allowed to live, which is the only reason you're still breathing. I will have to request that you don't hurt anybody who doesn't deserve it anymore, though." This statement finally brought Rainer to her boiling point. "Who the hell do you think you are to try and tell me what to do? If I wish to kill one or 1,000 of these measly humans then I will." She felt secure in her actions as she believed that the woman before her was some type of pacifist, but she was wrong. "I don't care if you believe yourself above humans, I won't let you go around doing as you please," replied Naruto with an edge to his voice. Rainer had finally had enough. She wouldn't be talked down to or controlled by anyone, especially some bitch that had to sneak attack her. With that she charged up 2 new light spears, one in each hand, and rushed her opponent. Just as she was upon Naruto he dodged. The right hook he threw in retaliation caught Rainer in the cheek and caused her world to explode. She went flying into one of the walls which now had an indent in her shape. As the pain started to subside a bit, Rainer couldn't believe what had just happened. With one punch she was taken down. She knew that she had passed out for a second, but the pain had woken her right back up. Her head was also screaming in protest of the pain that had been inflicted upon it, and she could now feel blood coming from out of every orifice on it. She looked at her captor in shock and fear as she once more began walking in her direction. "You seem to think from my earlier statement that I wouldn't kill you, but you're mistaken. Anyone who is a danger to the life of others I have no problem dealing with." This once more caused the fear in Rainer to increase. Was this how she was going to die? Would this be the end of her? How pathetic. She hadn't even achieved anything in her life, and it seemed that she never would. As Rainer looked up at the woman who was about to end her life, she couldn't help but chuckle. "Let's get it over with already." This caused Naruto to stop. "Are you going to try and kill anyone?" he asked. Rainer's eyes widened at this as she knew that she was being offered a second chance, but she wondered what she should do. She knew that most of this plan was for him and his goals, and she feared what he would do to her if she failed, let alone just gave up without trying. I have to do this," stated Reiner. "Why? It doesn't really seem to me like you do," replied Naruto, to which Reiner began to frown. "You don't get it. If I fail then even I don't know what's going to happen to me, but I know it won't be good." This caused Naruto to frown as he could sense Reiner's fear rising. "Is someone forcing you to do this?" he asked, sounding concerned. "No, I was doing this of my own accord, but now since I know that you'll probably kill me if I try makes me not want to do it anymore. Sadly not everyone is going to agree with this and he will most likely come after me." "Who is he? If you think that he'll try and force you to do what he wants, then let me help you," spoke Naruto, sincerely. He could feel the actual fear that Reiner held for whoever this mysterious man was and couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Reiner seemed to contemplate the offer before shaking it off. "No, there's nothing you can do to him even if you knew who he was. He's stronger than you think and wants nothing more than bloodshed. He's a warmonger who will kill anyone who opposes him." Naruto silently wondered who it was that Reiner was talking about. "Then why don't you just leave, go somewhere that whoever this guy is won't find you?" "I'm not sure that there's any place he wouldn't be able to find me and no one who can protect me," replied Reiner with a defeated tone. No matter what choice she made it would end badly for her. "So are you saying that you wish for me to just kill you or are you going to take your chance to survive?" asked Naruto as he continued his walk towards Reiner, who was still embedded in the wall. Reiner decided to actually think about her choices. One was sure death, while the other was a life on the run and constant hiding, but she would still live a bit longer. She also considered just lying and finishing her mission anyway, but she doubted that would work. "No, I'm not. If you let me go then I'll leave and never come back," replied Reiner, truthfully. The pervert wasn't worth her life and neither was the nun. While her plans with her would have been beneficial, it wasn't worth dying over. Naruto, seeing she was being honest, came up with a new plan. Since she seemed to be scared of someone who was an apparent warmonger he would help her. "Why don't you stick around since there's some information that I'll need from you," replied Naruto. Akeno had said that the Fallen was one of the devil's natural enemies. If this man was also a Fallen and all of this was his planning, then he could very well be trying to start a war, which was the reason for the large number of intruders in the area. He had to keep an eye out for this guy, and what better bait than someone he might want. He also wanted to find out more about the fallen angel species and would rather learn from an actual Fallen than those that hated them. Reiner thought about the offer for a second. She knew that if she went back to the Grigori she'd have to face him again and she didn't really want that. "Fine, I'll stick around for a bit. Hopefully this woman would be strong enough to protect her if and when the time came." With that Naruto gave her a smile. "One more thing, about the nun. What was your plan for her?" "My plan was to take her sacred gear, but I'm not going to do that anymore." "Why were you bringing her here? Did you take her from her family or something?" "No, she was coming on her own will, though she didn't know what we had planned for her. She also doesn't have anyone who actually cares what happens to her since she was excommunicated from the church." This caused Naruto to frown once more. "So when is she supposed to reach here?" "She'll be here within the next week, I was supposed to be the one to get her from the station," replied Reiner. "Then that's what we're going to do. When she reaches the both of us will go and get her, no exceptions." Naruto knew what it meant to be excommunicated. He didn't know who this nun was, but if she had nobody he would try and help her. "Fine, but I'm going to have to let my comrades know that the plan is off." Naruto nodded at this as he had thought of that also. "That's fine, I was going to release you anyway. After your friends clear out I'll meet you at the church, how long will you need to get rid of them?" "I can have them gone by tomorrow, though it might be harder to convince a few of them." Naruto just nodded at this. "Fine, but if you try and betray me I'll wipe every one of you out," spoke Naruto in the same calm voice while raising his power more than he had before. Reiner gave him a shaky nod as she was reminded that the person before her was not to be taken lightly. It was a few seconds later after being removed from the wall that Reiner had another realization. "How the hell do I get out of here?" she asked since she couldn't see any exits. "Yeah, sorry about this," replied Naruto. Before Reiner could ponder the statement Naruto had chopped her in the back of the neck, instantly knocking her out again. With that he finally allowed his transformation to dispel. He quickly made a clone that picked Reiner up and left to drop her off by the church. He wasn't just going to let her know the location of his base, after all. He wasn't that dumb to trust her, but he would give her a chance. "Don't you think that you're getting pretty deep into the supernatural world?" asked the voice of Kurama. "Yeah, but I can't just sit back while innocent people are in possible danger. I wouldn't be me if I didn't try and help others who need it, even if they don't know it." Kurama could only nod in agreement at this. Naruto was always the type that went out of his way to save people, no matter the cost. What he was trying to do now was not just save Issei, but stop any chance of a war breaking out before it could even start. "Just be careful and keep your guard up. We still don't know the full capabilities of all of these people, so we shouldn't take them lightly. Naruto agreed fully with his partner. Of course I will, and hopefully Reiner doesn't try to do something stupid and make problems for anyone. Naruto was willing to give her a chance, but he would deal with her if he had to. It wasn't long before Reiner awoke to find herself near the church. Damn it, did that bitch have to knock me out? She grumbled as she made her way towards the church. Luckily her head wasn't hurting anymore, so that was one problem out of the way. As she entered the church she was immediately greeted by her 3 other fallen siblings. They were Donasek, Kalwerner, and Mitlet. "Hey, Reiner, where the hell have you been?" asked Kalwerner. Reiner just sighed as she began to tell the others about what had happened, getting shocked looks from the others. They all knew that among the 4 of them Reiner was the strongest, so to find out she was easily beaten came as a bit of a shock to them. "Are we really cancelling all of our plans because some woman threatened you?" asked Donasek. "None of you were there to feel her power. It was terrifying, and it was obvious that she could probably end all of us without even trying. If we were to fight her, then we'd probably not survive," was her reply. She could see that they were beginning to accept what was happening, which was good. She was also glad that none of the others were in league with him, which meant they wouldn't have to worry about his retaliation. "So I guess we should go and let everyone else know of the change in plans," said Mitlet, who was quite annoyed by this whole situation, though she did understand. None of them wanted to die, after all. "Yeah, let's go," replied Reiner. With that the 4 fallen proceeded to the stairs for the underground cavern under the church to speak with all of the rogue exorcists they had brought along with them and explain the change of plans. As they came out at the bottom of the stairs a voice was immediately heard. "Hey, when the fuck do I get to kill some shitty devils?" asked the white-haired exorcist, which caused the fallen to sigh in annoyance. They could already feel their headaches growing from this conversation that hadn't even started yet. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Peace out.